He is the president of and a founding partner of an organization called Hidden Strategies. It is a millennial and minority-owned public opinion research firm, and its headquarters in DC. And here's some of the work he does. His research specializes in understanding and mobilizing people of color and young voters. People of color and young voters, like herding cats, all those folks together. He also does translation of data and actionable strategies for campaigns and institutions. Under his leadership since 2019, HIT Strategies has grown into a 30-plus person firm, and his insights are what is sought after by the Washington Post, Politico, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, NPR, CNN, MSNBC.
Number one, consistent underinvestment in the Democratic base has resulted in cycle over cycle erosion. Cycle over cycle. This was not because she was too woman. This is not because he was too old. These are trends that we have seen cycle over cycle. Democrats have done worse with every single voting bloc that we would consider our base. Young voters, Black voters, Latino voters, urban voters, working class voters. Every single group that Democrats would consider their base voter, we have done worse in every election since Barack Obama left the political stage. That is not because of a single candidate. That's not because the headwinds were too strong. That is because of underinvestment. And that could signal a realignment, which means that we are losing voters that will never come back if we do not do something quickly. Number two, men of color and the youth of color. We hear a lot about the gender gap, specifically in the Black community. We hear a lot about Black men voting different than Black women. First, I want to say the gender gap exists in every community. It's not unique to Black men. All men vote less than women, right? All groups of men, right? And so it's not unique to Black men. In fact, the gender gap is not even the worst amongst Blacks, right? But what we are discovering is that men of color and youth of color, we hear about the gender gap, but not enough about the generation gap, that these two groups are emerging as the swing voters that will determine the outcome of the last election and will determine the outcome of the next election. When we think about swing voters, we have an idea of who that is. Suburban white women, right? Like it's literally what media has conditioned us to believe about swing voters. Well, I'm going to show you data today that shows how men of color and youth of color are the swing voters that are determining the outcome of these elections. Number three, Democrats continue to lose the culture war about identity politics and the economic war about kitchen table politics because we are creating a false choice. We hear this, all of the post-election quarterback, post-election autopsy. We focus too much on identity politics. We got to focus on the kitchen table issues, right? That is a false choice. It is not an either or because the right is using identity politics to define the economic. That is what zero sum is. You have less because those people that don't look like you have more. They are using the culture issues to define the economic reality. And so, this idea that Democrats can just stop focusing on identity issues, stop focusing on culture issues. Well, the right isn't going to stop talking about those things. I mean, I wrote an op-ed 10 years ago, 2016, when Donald Trump first ran for president, that the Republicans have declared the culture war. Republicans have declared the culture war, and Democrats have not showed up for it. Just because we don't respond to these issues does not mean they go away, right? Kamala Harris tried very hard not to talk about identity issues. In fact, some of you, I remember when she was asked, Donald Trump has questioned whether or not you're Black. Remember her answer? Next question, right? Kamala Harris tried very hard not to inject identity into this campaign, while the other side was literally questioning whether or not she was Black. And so we don't have the option to not respond, right? Like if one side is declaring war we don't show up for it, we still lose. You still lose the fight that you didn't show up for. And so we have to, even if it's just to know how to respond to these issues, we have to know. And I'm going to demonstrate how we can flip the script on the zero-sum politics, because I believe that the reason our communities have less is not because of the people that have less than us. It's because of the people that have way too much, that are willing to take from us and from them so that they can have even more. And we have to be able to show that. And then number 4, Democrats are defending the systems that our voters are blaming for their pain. Since 2022, I've been warning the candidates that we work with, the political organizations that we work with, that we are not going to be able to mobilize our voters to defend democracy because they've had mixed results from democracy. We can mobilize them to defend their own community. We can mobilize them to defend their own rights. But democracy, not so much. The voters that would be mobilized to defend democracy are already voting. Those other ones don't believe in this democracy. And so defending it is not going to be mobilizing. And in fact, they are blaming many of these systems for the pain that they are in, right? I can tell you right now, look, I'll be hard pressed to sit in the focus group with Black folks that tell me that they love the Department of Education. I mean, these are institutions that have largely failed our communities. And so as he continues to burn many of these institutions down, I am arguing, I'm going to present some data here that will show that our best response is not to defend the institutions that he's burning down, but is to build better ones. We can recruit them to fix democracy. We can recruit them to build systems and institutions that serve them, but to defend the institutions that have already failed them. In fact, that's why many of them voted for the guy that offered to burn them down. In fact, this is how I explain in Washington. It's very hard for a lot of the very smart people in Washington to understand the Bernie Trump voter, right? That's very confusing. A voter that will vote for Bernie Sanders and then vote for Donald Trump is very confusing to ideology folks in Washington, to partisans in Washington. But in fact, they were all voting for the same thing, to burn it down. That's what Bernie Sanders was offering to do. The system is broken. There's something seriously wrong in this country. No, they were both offering to burn it down. They were just offering to replace it with different things. But they were both offering that the system is broken. The system is failing you, and that's why we have to burn it down. And finally, number 5, most important lesson I learned from the 2024 campaign, maybe a lesson I knew before then, policy is not a message. Policy is not a message. Policy is not a message. I'm going to go through what I would offer as the building blocks of a compelling political narrative, and policy is a part of that. But policy is not the message. And I would actually add there, identity is also not a message. What do I mean by that? When I joined the Kamala Harris campaign, in fact, I joined the Joe Biden campaign and became the Kamala Harris. And I remember sitting in rooms with a bunch of consultants and smart political folks in Washington who were very convinced that when Kamala Harris became the nominee, first of all, Joe Biden was trailing with Black voters by 20 to 25 points compared to where he was, specifically young people. And they were convinced when Kamala Harris became the nominee that they had fixed that problem. But identity is not a message, right? The two groups that she underperformed with the most, the first Black and API candidate, guess who she underperformed with the most? Black voters and API voters. Because identity is not a message. Let's dive into some of this data. Can I go to the next slide, folks? Back one. I'm sorry, actually go back one more.
You controlling it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we all know that Black voters are not a monolith. We understand that. So what we've set out to do at Hit Strategies was to begin to define the groups of Black voters, segmentation analysis, that is segmented and clustered Black voters into 5 groups. This took over 10,000 interviews. And what we discovered is that there are roughly five groups of Black voters Voters can move between these groups depending on, political circumstances. Voters can belong to more than one group, but essentially there are 5 key groups of Black voters. The first, the Legacy Civil Rights Group. This will have the QR code up. Since you often have the slides. There's a lot of old categories that you might not understand. But the first, the Legacy Civil Rights Group. They are the largest voting bloc. They are the most likely voters in America, Black voters over the age of 50. They're the most likely voters, not the Black electorate, the most likely voters in the entire electorate. They're the most likely Democrats. The second bullet there you might not be able to see is called vote power. This is one of the most important questions that we ask on every survey. We ask the question, regardless of how often you vote, how much power does your vote have to make a difference in your life? And what we discovered is that the higher they rate those perceptions of power, the more likely they are to vote. A lot of pollsters use things like, you may have heard enthusiasm or motivation, how enthusiastic are you to vote in the next election? And we use those questions to predict who's going to actually turn out. What we discovered is that not all Black folks vote enthusiastic. In fact, I had one young man tell me in the focus group, voting for him is like taking out the trash. You don't always want to do it, but if you don't, then it might start to stick. That don't sound like a government that's voting enthusiastic. You don't enthusiastically take out the trash, but you're going to take out the trash. And so we had to find other metrics to measure, to predict who's going to vote. One of those metrics we found is vote power. For the Legacy Civil Rights Group, 8 out of 10 believe that their votes have a lot of power. 8 out of 10. It's the highest we've seen anywhere in the electorate. That's why they're the most likely voters in the electorate. The second group there, I didn't even know existed until we did this project. They're called aspirational activists. Small but mighty group. Many of you in this room, in fact, I would argue that most of you in this room belong in these first 2 groups. The aspirational activists, we call them aspirational. They are young, Black, more likely to be women, but not all women. We call them aspirational because they have the highest per capita income, highest education level, highest home ownership. We call them activists because they are activated about every issue. Reproductive justice, economic justice, racial justice. They're not just voting. They are volunteering. They are donating. They are running for office, right? That's the aspirational activists. Small but mighty. The next 2 groups, though, the Black and yellow, are the groups that I spend the most time, the groups that I believe determine the outcome of the last election and will continue to determine the outcome of elections. Together, they make up 50% of the Black. These 2 groups have voted in 1 or less of the last 2 elections. They have voted in 1 or 0 of the last 2 elections. That is half of the Black. They look just alike by demographics. They're all Black. They're all under 50. They look just alike by voting patterns. They voted in 1 or fewer of the last 2 elections. So why are they 2 different groups? If they look alike and they vote alike, the next gen optimists, 21% of the Black electorate, they are, look at their vote power. You can't see it. Their vote power is 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 of them believe their votes have a lot of power to make a difference in their lives, almost as high as the civil rights. It was 8 out of 10. So if they believe that their votes have power, they really liked Kamala Harris, they didn't mind Joe Biden, then why didn't they vote? Why are they missing all these elections? If they believe that their votes have power, I had to sit in focus groups and ask, and I literally asked them, what makes you miss elections? What would make you miss the next election? When's the last time you missed an election? You know what they tell me? Nothing would make me miss an election. I've never missed an election. I always vote. Voting is important to me. I know voting makes a difference. And then I show them their voting records. But you missed 3 of them. That's good. They get angry at themselves. They get angry at the system. See, look, why nobody tell me? This is the problem. This is what we call a GOTV universe. Split out the voters. They are our voters. They believe in the system. They just miss it. Voting is just not the most important thing in their lives. They missed the election. They missed it. And they were pissed off on Wednesday when they woke up and got God damn it, yes, there was election. They're really angry because they believe in it and they like her and they know it makes a difference. They literally just forgot. The second group, though, that rightfully cynical, we call them rightfully cynical, and not just cynical, because they are closest to lowest per capita income, lowest education attainment, lowest life expectancy. They're really dying. Vote. Look at that vote. 3 out of 10 believe that their votes have power. 3 out of 10. They don't like Democrats. They don't like Republicans. They don't like churches. They don't like banks. They don't like Greek letter organizations. They don't like you. They don't like me. They don't like none of it. They are angry. They're rightfully angry. They've been failed by every institution. We've heard them called, I call them rightfully Senate, but you've heard them called some other names, double haters. They don't like either party. They don't like either party, right? They are not smiling. They are angry, y'all. And I got to be clear about this. They're not just frustrated. It's not just anxiety or despair. They are pissed off. They are mad, and not just at him. They mad at us. They mad at Urban League. They mad at NAACP. They mad at pastors. They mad at vaccines. They mad at 5G. They mad at all of us. Because they are, I talk to them every day. They focus on the pain. They do not understand why they are working so hard, why they are doing everything right, and everything is going on. They do not understand. And so they angry. That's who's voting to burn it down. All of it. Burn it all down. They don't care what comes next. It gotta be better than this. The pain, I keep saying the next time someone invites me to come and speak, I'm just gonna start playing focus groups so that y'all can listen to this pain. Because the only thing that makes that pain worse is when we judge them for them. When we wag our finger at them, shame on them. How dare you? This is a quote here that says, "My didn't get no better under Obama. It didn't get no worse under Trump. So what does Biden come with next?" That's a quote I heard from this. It's actually a quote I heard from White House. No matter who the president is, my hood ain't getting no better. And my life ain't getting no worse. So y'all left whoever you want. This last group, the race neutral conservatives. Only 7% of the Black electorate. These are actual conservatives, fiscal conservatives, social conservatives. They don't support abortion. They don't care about climate change. They don't support many of the progressive issues, right? But notably, they're only 7% of Black. But the question I often get is, if there's only 7% of Black folks that are actually conservatives, then why are Republicans getting 20% of Black votes? I can tell you where they're getting them from. Rightfully cynical, that don't like either party. That's who he's talking to when he says, "What the hell do you have to lose?" He ain't talking to you. You know exactly what you have to do. They have gained nothing in politics. So they will lose. I really ask them in focus groups every day, when is the last time politics has made your life? When is the last time any politician has made your life? They really, really like walking away. He did not make their lives better. And they still like him, but none of this is affecting their lives in ways. And so that is who Republicans have been investing in, the cynical voter, this angry voter. Just take that one. Let's get that one. All right. Here's where I want to show you this political realignment that's been happening since Barack Obama exited. Even if you can't see all these numbers on the back, you can see a trend line on all these graphs. They're all going down. All of them. And what this is the presidential, Democrat support for Democratic presidential candidates in every election since Barack Obama's last election, 2012. The red bar is 2012, the yellow bar is Hillary Clinton, 2016, the green bar is Joe Biden, and the blue bar is Kamala Harris. This is broken up by race and gender for Black, API, Latino, and white. And the one trend line that you will see here is that for Black voters, API voters, Latino voters, the trend line has been consistent. We are doing worse in every single election, with Black men and women, with Latino men and Latino, with API men and API. The only group that has remained remarkably consistent is white voters. 42% of white voters voted for Barack Obama, 42% of white voters voted for Kamala Harris. Despite, look, I voted for Kamala Harris. I can tell you, overall, the majority of resources, instead of what we call a general market, that means what? That means what? We are spending the overwhelming majority of our resources to persuade white voters that are not moving up or down, to us or away from us. They just ain't moving. All of the movement in the electorate is happening with voters of color. This is what I call a realignment. If we do not do something about what is happening with voters of color, all right, I want to spend some time talking about.
I'm glad she's okay.
Spend some time talking about men, because I do believe that they are becoming the swing vote. I go back here, you'll see the group that is swinging the most across all of these. Black men, 16% drop off since Barack Obama. API men, 16% drop off since Barack Obama. Latino men, 16% drop off since Barack Obama. It is the men of color that are swinging away from the party the most. I want to talk a little bit about that. And this is where I started, the culture and the economic begin to blend. Because of course there's economic anxiety. Men often rate economic issues higher than social issues, cost of living, wages, jobs. And we saw a lot of anxiety until that was president. A lot of economic anxiety, frustration. I mean, my little brothers just graduated from college 2 years ago, still living at home. You know what I mean? Like, he did all the right things, and it just made him trouble. He just got more debt, right? And so there's this frustration with the system. It's promised things, but delivered nothing. And so there's some of that. But on the right here, these blue boxes, I want to talk about, because these are the values that we have. We ask them. And we ask these questions in both. Which of these values is most important to your identity? And the values that men are most likely to identify, values like masculinity, hard work, religion, patriotism, self-reliance, self-determination, family. I mean, when I put these values in a focus group and ask which party represents masculinity, religion, family, patriotism, doesn't matter where the focus is, the answer is going to be the same. Republicans, for all of this. In fact, in many of these rooms I speak in Washington, when I remind folks that not all masculinity is toxic, I've literally been challenged to prove it. I'm like, wait, guys, is this something that we're just accepting, that masculinity is a bad thing? I can assure you, if we are seeding masculinity, if we're seeding the American people, we cannot cede all of these things to Republicans and expect to maintain the men that hold these values the closest. And so what I've done here, and you have the slides, is list examples of how we can reclaim these values without changing progressive policies. And I'm not saying that we have to abandon women's issues. I'm not saying we abandon abortion or we abandon, the right to choose. In fact, there are examples here. As the head of my household, it is up to me, my wife, my sister, my mother, my daughter, as the head of my household. Do you know how many Democrats have told me to strike that line from this list? Take it out. Why do men have to be out? Because that's what 60. Why do men have to be out? Democrats actually to take that line out, right? Because it's, I don't know, I think they would assume that it's less appealing to women. But in fact, 69% of Black women believe that men should be head of household. I'm like, if you just talk to your voters, ask them, right? Examples here. If God grants us all freedom of choice, then why should government grant women less? Right? These are examples of how we can reclaim these values without changing our policies. But we have to, my question has been, do we want these voters? Do we want men in this party? Because if so, all masculinity, we cannot just cast it. The next thing I wanted to point to are the other two things, two themes that we have heard since the election that have contributed to why people believe Kamala Harris lost. One was the trans evidence. She is for them and they, and he is for you. And the other is they're taking your black jobs. All the immigrants are taking black. These are two things that we heard consistently. You all are not responding to this. Respond to these two things. I was one of those people when I was on the campaign. We had to respond to these two things. The reason I knew that those two attacks could be effective is because I asked questions and I listened to them. One of the questions we asked, in fact, through some of our data, we discovered that 59% of Black voters believe that gains of the LGBTQ community sometimes come at the expense of Black people. 59% of Black folks. 64% of Black folks believe that sometimes the gains of the Latino community come at the expense of the Black community. That's what I heard when I heard they're taking you Black jobs. I heard, see, look, they keep getting more and I keep getting less. See, look, they keep getting all the things I need. But this is how culture, how identity issues shapes economic. That's why we can't separate. And because when I talk to those cynical voters, those rightfully cynical voters, what we hear is, that pain needs a reason. Why does my life suck? Why am I working so hard? Everything sucks. And then he comes along. He gives them a reason. It's because they're taking your black jobs. It's because of those trans folks, those immigrants. It's because all of those people that have less than you still have too much. Okay? And the graph on the right, think about it. I can only come up with one. Donald Trump. You're not buying things. There was racism before Donald Trump. Right? There was sexism before. My life sucked before Donald Trump. And so we'll come along and do it again. Tell them all of the pain, all of their frustration, all because they are not buying it. We have tried to sell them over and over and over, and they are buying it less and less every time. So we are offering on the right that there's a different reason for it. And we know that it resonates because 73% of Americans believe that big corporations and billionaires have rigged the system to keep themselves rich. 73% of Americans believe that. In August of 2023, I asked the question. Before the richest man in the world went into the White House and dozed our entire federal government, before a big, beautiful bill took away poor kids' school lunches to give billionaires tax cuts, they already believed that billionaires and big corporations were rigging the system. And so all we are offering is that we can change the narrative that it's not, your pain is not because the people that have less. Your pain is because the people that have way too much that are willing to take from you so that they can have even more. It ain't because of a trans kid. It ain't because of an immigrant doing a job that you would never do. It's because of the billionaires and corporations rigging the system. And what we are going to see, and 70% of Americans agree with that in August. And we're going to see over the next, we're already seeing it, the exponential growth in the top 1%. Yeah. And I mean, it is.
Yeah, because the sound too.
It's obscene. Elon Musk was worth $10 billion when Donald Trump was elected president. He's worth $44 billion now. It was 9 months ago. It is obscene. And so this isn't a hard bargain for us to sell. We just got to start selling it. And it's, like I said, I got 10 more minutes. All right. Don't trip. Skip that. Skip this resistance section. Okay. Effective message. We've already talked about the fact that policy is not a message. So what is? What is an effective message? What is an effective political message? What is the narrative? Right? And along with policy is not a message. Taglines are not messages. Yes, we can. Right? It's not a message. It's a brand. The message behind yes, we can. Make America great again. Right? It's not a message. It's just a brand. It's a need. The message has to explain the world, describe the world as we see it. So what do we think that looks like? Number one. All right. So effective message.
Number one, we have to define the problem. Talk to two mics. We have to define the problem. What is causing their pain, right? We already started with that. It's because the billionaires and the top 1% are rigging the system Second, we have to define the vision of the world if we solve that problem. What does the world look like if the top 1% were not rigging the rules? Third, we can introduce policies to achieve that vision. Policies can't be the only part of the message, but they are a part of the message. What I learned on the Kamala Harris campaign, though, is that we can't stop at the policy, because I wrote and tested the opportunity agenda for Kamala Harris. This is the first ever economic agenda for Black and Latino men. I'm sorry, for men of color. I wrote it. I sat in focus groups. I asked them what they wanted. I wrote an agenda. I gave it to her. She said, yes, I will do all of that. If I become president, I will do all of that. I took the agenda back into the focus groups and gave it to them. They said, this is all great. I said, is this enough for you to vote for her? Absolutely not. Okay. I did the same thing in 2016 with Hillary Clinton when I was focus grouping activists that were in the streets. And I was testing policies that Hillary Clinton was promising to adopt if she was president. And she had adopted these policies directly from the Black Lives Matter movement. Body cameras, choke codes, ending private prisons, check. And I remember putting it in front of those activists and saying, is this enough for you to vote for her? Absolutely not. And so when I start to dig into why is it that the candidate that's promising to give you everything that you just told me that you wanted is still not enough? Because she's not gonna get any of that done. And so this is when I realize that along with the policies, we have to demonstrate a plan to get it done. Project 2025, one of the things that we did most effectively on the Kamala Harris campaign was to raise the name ID of Project 2025 to 100%. Everybody in the country knows what it is now. The other problem, though, is that everybody in the country now knows that Republicans have a plan, and they're now asking for ours. What is your plan to get it done? What if the courts say no? What if Congress says no? How you gonna raise minimum wage if you don't got the votes? We got to have a plan. And so both Project 2025 and what I would argue has been an incredibly effective first 9 months, incredibly effective. It is demonstrating to the country that you can use every lever of power. I didn't know you can use the Smithsonian I didn't know you can use colleges and universities and museums and everything to bring about the agenda. And that is what it's going to take. We have to define the problem. We have to present a vision of the world. This is what I keep telling Democrats in Congress. Y'all can't just be the minority. You got to be the opposition. And opposition requires showing an alternative vision. Okay, you voted no to their budget. Well, what would your budget be? Okay, you voted no to that secretary of insert whoever. Well, who would your secretary be? We have to start presenting an alternative vision. Then we can introduce policies. And then we're going to have a plan to get it done. I got 2 more slides for you. Skip through there. In fact, last slide, because I got to take questions. Okay. This is what I mean when I say we have to present an alternative vision. This is what I call this 3 worlds paradigm. The first world is the world that we had on Election Day. In fact, I would argue this has been the world for the last 250 years. The rules, the institutions, the Constitution, a couple of amendments, it really ain't changed that much. That world was not working for many of our voters. That world was status quo. That is the world they were angry at. Those are the institutions that they don't want to defend. And so many of them voted to burn it down. The second world is the world that is being forged today. It is a new world order, domestically and internationally. The old rules don't matter. The old Constitution don't matter. The old institutions don't matter. This is why we are seeing entire agencies disappear. 100-year-old agencies gone just like that, because it's a new world. A new world order is being forged. What I'm arguing for, and I want to close with this, is that Democrats cannot go back out to the American people and ask them to restore the old world, to put back those norms, to put back those institutions, to put USAID back, to put Department of Education back, to put Consumer Protection Bureau back, to put the rules back. They don't want it back. We cannot mobilize them to put the first world back. But since the first world has already been burned down, we can mobilize them to build the next world. And the next world is going to have to be bold. and big, not tinkering along the edges. I'm talking constitutional convention. We have to rewrite all of it. Like, we imagine a world, and this is where I believe we can mobilize these young folks that don't want to participate in this system because they don't believe in it. But we can mobilize them to build a new system, right? In the new world, we ain't drawing redistricting lines based on the political party and power. Politicians don't get to pick their voters in the new world. There's a national redistricting commission. In the new world, the candidate that gets the most votes wins. No more electoral college. In the new world, billionaires don't buy issues on the ballot. No more money in politics. None. Zero. No more money. Public financing. Every candidate gets the same check, and now you have a competition of ideas. That's it. The government pay you. If you're running, here's your $1 million. Go tell them, and your candidate's your opponent's gonna get $1 million. You both go tell them why it should be you. In the new world, and I really do believe this. I mean, we are seeing it happen. The world that we thought was so hard and unmovable. He is demonstrating to me we could change all this shit. I'm so sorry. Bishop. I'm just saying, like, we gotta. I'm not talking about like, ooh, we need to raise the minimum wage by $2. I'm talking about a new world order. Next year, we are celebrating or something. We are commemorating the 250-year birthday of America. All of us were not included in the world that was built for the last 250 years. By amendment and protest and petition, we fought our way into that world, but it was never built for us. We have to build a new world for the next 250 years that is built for us, that is built by us, that we did not fight our way into, but it was built so that we can all thrive in it. That is going to take courage. It's going to take some political imagination. I've had the opportunity to work in politics around the world. There are better ways to do this. America hasn't figured out the best way to do this. We can adopt from other places the things that are working. Public financing is not an idea. It's a thing that happens in the UK. Elections in the UK are 6 months. That's it. You don't get to start until 6 months prior. You all get the same check and you race on ideas. We can build a better world, y'all. Thank you so much.